Good morning. The committee meets today to consider the nomination of General Christopher Cavoli to be the next commander of U.S. European Command and Supreme Allied Commander Europe. General, your nomination is well-deserved, and I thank you for your willingness to lead in this very, very important position. We welcome your wife, Christina, your parents, Ivo and Rita, and thank your father for his distinguished service in the United States Army. Your brother, Stephen, we thank him for his distinguished service in the United States Army. Your sister-in-law, Michelle, who are all with us today. We thank you, and them, rather, for the continued support of your service and, again, their distinguished service to the nation themselves. Your current role as the Commanding General of the U.S. Army, Europe, and Africa has no doubt provided you with critical experience and insights which will serve you well if confirmed in this new role. Your career spans nearly 35 years with distinguished service across multiple theaters and in close collaboration with allies and partners across the globe. Further, you have studied the challenges in Europe from numerous vantage points, including your current leadership in assisting our Ukrainian partners and reassuring our NATO allies. You have also served as Russia Director on the Joint Staff and studied these issues in academia, including earning a master's degree in Russian and East European Studies and serving as a fellow at the George C. Marshall Center for Security Studies in Germany. If confirmed, you will take command in the midst of the greatest test of the NATO alliance since World War II. The alliance has showed remarkable unity and resolve in the face of Russia's unprovoked and illegal attack on Ukraine. A formidable array of our allies have joined together, and in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. and our NATO allies and partners have mobilized with impressive speed to bolster Ukrainian resolve, reinforce credible combat power along the eastern flank, and impose severe cost on Russia's elite. Putin's actions have drastically altered the European security landscape. NATO unity has been solidified. Countries like Sweden and Finland have officially applied to join the alliance, and others like Germany are taking steps to invest greater proportions of their national budgets and institutional energies to improve their military capabilities. Ensuring the alliance is able to generate and maintain the collective force posture, operations, and investment to deter Russian aggression will be a primary responsibility for the next Eucom commander. General, with NATO set to announce a new strategic concept at its summit in Madrid in June, I would like to know your views on the current plans for U.S. military presence and posture in the Eucom area of responsibility. I also hope you will share your thoughts on how the United States and our allies should begin to reassess the security environment fundamentally altered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Unlike the threat from Russia, for which there is little disagreement among our European partners as to the size and scope of the issue, our allies have a range of views on the challenges posed by China. Beijing's growing economic influence and diplomatic presence in Europe, coupled with its growing military relationship with Russia, may have serious implications for transatlantic economy and security. In 2019, the NATO allies agreed to mention China for the first time in a NATO declaration, stating that China's growing influence and international policies present both opportunities and challenges that we need to address together as an alliance. The next Eucom commander will have to work with the interagency and across the alliance to address Chinese malign influence within the region. General, I hope you share what expectations you have with regard to NATO's developing China policy and what steps can be taken to mitigate this growing threat. Finally, as we reflect on the realities of the 21st century warfare on display in Ukraine, the committee would benefit from hearing what lessons you would bring to prepare our forces for any potential future conflict. We would also benefit from insights from your current post at U.S. Army Europe and Africa, particularly in areas such as military mobility, large-scale multilateral exercises, and engagements with partners and allies across the theater. I hope you will share how you would intend to use such insights if confirmed as the next Eucom commander. Thank you again, General, for your continued willingness to serve, and I look forward to your testimony. And let me now recognize the ranking member, Senator Inhofe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you and General Cavoli for your willingness to continue and distinguished service to our country. Enjoyed meeting your wife, your parents, and other family members just earlier this morning, and they are with us today, and I just know how proud they are of you and the service you have given to your country. And I'll note that you were born in Europe during one of your father's tours there, so it's clear that you were destined to fill this role we're discussing here today. We are considering your nomination to lead the United States and NATO forces in Europe at a pivotal point in our history. Russia's unprovoked, unjustified invasion of Ukraine has been a wake-up call to the free world that we need to deter Putin, not accommodate him, not appease him, as some would want to do, but to deter him. But this was not a surprise to many of us here today who also understand that protecting America's interests means supporting Ukraine's defense and working to deter further Russian aggression against NATO. I am encouraged that Europe is now stepping up to their investment in their own defense, with Finland and Sweden now seeking the NATO membership, and in response to Putin's reckless acts. You know, we got to keep up this momentum to strengthen our shared security. We've seen what happens in Ukraine when deterrence fails. That's why I have long advocated that we invest more in our own defense to ensure deterrence doesn't fail even worse ways. I don't want anyone to forget that China is supporting what Russia is doing in Ukraine, and China's long been involved in malign activity in Europe itself. General Cavoli, you are the right man for the job, and during these exceptional times, I look forward to working with you on bolstering the United States security interests with our European allies and partners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe. General Cavoli, your remarks, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and distinguished members of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and thank you for the support that you provide to our servicemen and women and to their families. I'm humbled to be nominated to serve as the commander of U.S. European Command and as the Supreme Allied Commander Europe. I'm grateful to President Biden, to Secretary Austin, and to General Milley for the trust and the confidence that they place in me, especially at this momentous time in Europe. I must, of course, start by thanking the person who has made the most difference to me throughout my career, my wife and my best friend, Christina. Being a military spouse is not easy. There are routine separations, constant moves, and the tragedies of war. Christina has handled all of this with dignity and with grace. She has selflessly supported our soldiers and their families, even while raising our own two sons, Alex and Nick. I'm so proud that we can share this moment together today. I'd also like to thank my sons. Alex graduated Princeton and works at a clean energy startup company in California, and his younger brother, Nick, is studying physics at the University of California in Santa Barbara. These two have followed me all over the world. They attended 3 high schools each, and I could not be more proud of the young Americans that they have turned out to be. As I talk about my family, I reflect on my own life. As the ranking member pointed out, my dad's an Italian immigrant and came to America and became a U.S. Army officer. I was born in a military hospital in Würzburg, Germany, during the Cold War. Over the years, we lived in Europe again and again. We were blessed with multiple assignments there. For the past 4.5 years, I have been fortunate to command our U.S. Army forces in Europe, and for the past year, in Africa, too. I've had the priceless opportunity to work closely with the interagency, our allies, and our partners to advance our common national security objectives. For the last 3 years, I have done so under the leadership of General Todd Walters. I would like here to publicly thank him for his mentorship and for his leadership during that time. I'd also like to thank you, the United States Congress, and especially this committee. Since my first tour as a general officer in Europe in 2014, the Congress has worked tirelessly to support our servicemen and women in our mission. The European Deterrence Initiative, which you have repeatedly authorized, has been absolutely vital to building the military readiness necessary to deter Russia and to respond in times of crisis. In response to this crisis, the illegal and unprovoked Russian invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. military has deployed significant combat power on short notice. The 5th Corps Headquarters, an armored brigade combat team that drew pre-positioned stocks, the 18th Airborne Corps Headquarters with the brigade from the 82nd Airborne Division, a carrier strike group, 5th-generation fighters, additional destroyers. All of this has been enabled by the European Deterrence Initiative and by the hard work of training and exercising that the EDI has enabled over the years. If confirmed, I look forward to continuing to build on this vital work, ensuring that Eucom remains ready to respond, along with our allies and partners, to any threat to our national security. In Europe, the core security challenge is Russia. Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine ushers in a new era in European security. NATO is more energized and unified than I have seen in years. Our allies and partners have rushed with us to assist Ukraine to remain independent and free. And on the far side, it will be up to us all to reestablish an enduring stability. But Russia is not our only challenge. China's growing influence is also of huge concern, as are terrorism, migration, cybersecurity, and climate change. So we cannot be a one-problem alliance. We must maintain vigilance across 360 degrees, ready to respond to any and all threats. We are in a time when unity in the alliance is of the greatest importance. Our allies will be our strength as we go forward. If confirmed, I will work closely with this committee and will provide my best military advice with the goal of promoting our security interest and defending the principles that we have all fought so hard for over these years. It has been an honor to serve this country for the past 35 years. If confirmed, I will be thankful for the opportunity to continue to serve alongside the brave servicemen and women of Eucom and of our NATO allies. I thank this committee once again for your time today and for the opportunity to speak with you. I very much look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, General. There are a series of questions which nominees must respond to.
Yes.
Please respond appropriately. Have you adhered to applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest?
Yes.
Have you assumed any duties or taken any actions that would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process?
No, sir.
Exercising our legislative and oversight responsibilities makes it important that this committee, its subcommittees, and other appropriate committees of the Congress receive testimonies, briefings, reports, records, and other information from the executive branch on a timely basis. Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify before this committee when requested?
I do, Chairman.
Do you agree, when asked before this committee, to give your personal views, even if your views differ from the administration?
Yes, I do.
Do you agree to provide records, documents, and electronic communications in a timely manner when requested by this committee, its subcommittees, or other appropriate committees of Congress, and to consult with the requester regarding the basis for any good faith delay or denial in providing such records?
Yes.
Will you ensure that your staff complies with deadlines established by this committee for the production of reports, records, and other information, including timely responding to hearing questions for the record?
I will, sir.
Will you cooperate in providing witnesses and briefers in response to congressional requests?
Yes.
Will those witnesses and briefers be protected from reprisal for their testimony or briefings?
Yes, they will.
Thank you very much, General. I think it's both significant and maybe a bit ironic that we first met in Ukraine in about 2014 when you were leading the efforts to start organized training efforts and support efforts for Ukrainian forces. And I think your work then has shown itself to be extraordinarily useful today. So thank you for that. Part of what you pointed out in your testimony is a unity among NATO and a commitment to invest seriously in defense. And then it raises two questions. Your quick thoughts about how you're going to coordinate the investment of NATO countries so that everyone doesn't buy X and we don't have any Y? And then what should the United States do as a catalyst, but also as the leading member?
Senator, if I could start with the second question first, I think the U.S.'s special role inside NATO is to point the way toward the future and to demonstrate with our actions how to go in that direction. So by deploying force, we have led the way for NATO in this crisis, as an example. As we arm our own military, we create a model that other nations in the alliance can emulate. In my current role, I spend a lot of time talking with the chiefs of other European armies about how we arm ourselves, how we organize ourselves, and many of them use those lessons or those examples as models for themselves. So I think inside NATO, our special role is to be a model and an exemplar. How will we coordinate the investments as we go forward? This is always a devilish thing to do. It can be very difficult. There is an initiative inside NATO right now to link plans to required structure to national commitments. General Walters has begun that and has advanced that. It will fall to me, if I am confirmed, to complete that work, and that work will guide the capabilities and capacities that we need from various nations and in support of NATO's planning efforts.
Thank you very much, General. To date, NATO and communities around the world have been able to move logistics into Europe without any type of interruption. And indeed, I think there's a question of how long that might be allowed. But in a potential fight, the idea of uncontested logistics is probably the first thing you throw out. Are you preparing for a situation in this context or broader context for fighting to get your logistics forward to your troops?
We are, Senator. In U.S. Army Europe, this is a source of significant concern as we look at our plans, especially our plans to reinforce our forces in Europe in the event of a large crisis. When we look at it, we divide it from the U.S., from fort to port, and then from port to port across the Atlantic, and then from port to the point of need in Europe. Each one of those segments carries its own challenges and has different people responsible for solving those problems. So we work in a partnership with U.S. Transcom and with the U.S. Army to get Army forces from fort to port. We work with U.S. Transcom as well as the Second Fleet and JFC Norfolk, a newly stood up command to control the sea lanes of the Atlantic to go from port to port. And then I am largely responsible with our NATO allies and related organizations such as the Joint Support and Enabling Command, recently stood up by NATO, to get folks from port to the point of need. Each one brings different challenges. Those challenges could be the threat of kinetic strike or the threat of cyber activity and so forth. So yes, we work very hard on that, Senator.
You mentioned the issue of cyber, and I think many people are waiting for the shoe to drop vis-a-vis the Russians and cyber in this present situation. This is an open hearing, but are any comments you would like to make about that?
Well, Senator, I think we're correct to be waiting for the other shoe to drop. There is capability and capacity that could be used, and we are being very vigilant about that as a DoD. To go far beyond that, I think we would have to go into a classified setting, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, General. And again, I think your service not only justifies this confirmation, but demands it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Inhofe, please.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I echo your comments about the background of our witness today. And we've had an opportunity to discuss a number of things over the years and we discussed the subject of the Ukraine grain shortage and the spillover effects that are there in my office. And there are three questions that come from that should be a part of the record that we'll build today on this issue. And that is, first of all, how concerned are you by the food crisis that has resulted from Russia blocking Ukrainian grain exports to Africa? And you know that I've had an interest in this for quite some time. Secondly, what will be the longer-term security effects of this, and what more should we do with our European and African allies and partners to address these problems now?
Senator, thank you. Indeed, in my role as the commanding general of U.S. Army forces in Africa, this has weighed pretty heavily on our minds. The grain shortages that we're experiencing from both Russia and Ukrainian production being unable to come out of the countries in large volume or being sanctioned and not being sold are being felt on the African continent. They were felt very quickly. I was recently in Kenya, and there was a significant impact there already. We know that in other countries, such as Tunisia, the prices have skyrocketed for basic foodstuffs. So there is food insecurity in Africa that is being provoked by the shortage of grain. It's of great concern. In many cases, these are countries that don't need an additional challenge. And those additional challenges we will have to help them with at some point. This will largely be a European concern because of the close connection between African security issues and European security issues. With regard to what to do about it, there are many proposals, Senator, being batted about right now, many different ways. Some of them are very, very positive. We think there are about 20 million tons 22 million tons of grain in Ukraine backed up, waiting to be pulled out. Some of the ports we're attempting to use, the Romanians have made the port at Constanta available, only does about 90,000 tons a day. But the German Deutsche Bahn has recently stepped up. That's the German National Railroad Agency, and they are doing what they call a Berlin train lift, an analogy to the Berlin airlift, to dedicate trains to pulling wheat right out of Ukraine into Western Europe. Poland has established a new border crossing regime with Germany in order to facilitate that. So I think some efforts are taking place. Much more remains to be done, Senator.
Good, good. Very good. General Cavoli, General Walters testified before this committee, and it sounds almost impossible, but he said that our troops' ability to deploy from the United States and be up and running in less than a week to deter further Russian aggression was made possible by the funding through the European Deterrence Initiative. This committee spearheaded this initiative after Russia first invasion in 2014. Do you agree with General Walters' assessment? And what ways have you seen the EDI enable our robust response? It's almost, it's very difficult to understand that this was possible.
Senator, with EDI over the past few years, the U.S. Army, in conjunction with U.S. European Command, has placed large amounts of very modern equipment, brigade combat team sets, in storage in Europe. And we've also used the funding to practice flying over and drawing that equipment on short notice. And in the beginning of this crisis, when we got the order to activate and deploy the 1st Brigade of the 3rd Infantry Division out of Fort Stewart, Georgia, we were able to do so very quickly. We moved all the troops in about 4 days by aircraft, and those troops, the first of them, were putting rounds downrange in less than a week. And by the end of 3 weeks, every single screwdriver in the brigade had been issued, and they were ready to roll any place.
Yeah, and that could not have been done. It wouldn't be possible, and a lot of people thought it wasn't possible if it hadn't been for the preparation that you mentioned, that you had the foresight to ready yourselves.
100%, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Inhofe. Senator Shaheen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Cavoli, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you, ma'am.
And thank you for being here this morning and for your service, and welcome to your family as well. You were kind enough to meet recently with Senator Tillis and I to talk about some NATO issues, but we also talked a little bit about, as I recall, a little bit about our recent visit to the Balkans, where we were in Bosnia-Herzegovina and talked with the military leadership of the EUFOR mission and NATO there about some of the challenges that are facing Bosnia and concern about whether EUFOR is going to be reauthorized this fall when it comes up again before the UN. And I wonder if you could, as we think about the potential for Russian meddling in the Balkans, and they have a history of doing that, and the challenges that Bosnia-Herzegovina faces, can you talk about what the impact would be if the EUFOR mission is not renewed?
Senator, first of all, Russian influence in the Balkans is real, and it is not a positive force in my experience. So it is something we must think about constantly. The presence of multinational forces such as KFOR in Kosovo and EUFOR in Bosnia and Herzegovina is an important part of our ability to monitor and to help control the situations there. I do believe EUFOR has an important mandate. If EUFOR's mandate is not renewed, I believe that there must be some effort that takes its place. If I am confirmed, I will look into that immediately and participate in the development of options, and I look forward to discussing it with you in the future, Senator.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to hear that. I think that it's very important that we work with our European partners and ensure that we don't see that mission expire and nothing replace it. So thank you very much for that. You spoke earlier with Senator Inhofe about the challenges of getting the grain out of Ukraine that is needed in so many parts of the world. And one of the biggest challenges has been the Russian really predominance in the Black Sea and the inability to dislodge them. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what we might do there to bolster NATO defenses in the Black Sea, what options we might have as we're looking at the challenges we face because of Russia's dominance in the Black Sea.
Yes, ma'am. For some time before the onset of this crisis, that is for a couple of years before this current crisis, we in U.S. Eucom had been working on strengthening the presence and the role of the U.S. and NATO in the Black Sea area. This has been something we're working on for some time. In the Naval Forces Europe, for example, has been working with the Bulgarians on a maritime domain awareness system. My command, the U.S. Army in Europe, has been working on long-range fires with the Romanian Army and the establishment of command and control nodes that are able to handle the very high-end new equipment that Romania has been buying from us, specifically Patriot missiles and HIMARS rocket launchers. So we have been looking at things like that in the past, Senator, and we will continue to do those in the future if I'm confirmed.
So do you think we have an adequate strategy within NATO and in the U.S. for the Black Sea region?
Ma'am, I think inside the U.S. we have strategy, adequate. All strategies have to be assessed, reviewed, and updated all the time. Clearly, the current events in the Black Sea region are going to require us to go back and make sure that we adjust everything for the result of this conflict. And I think I could say the same thing for the NATO approach, but I will have to wait and, if I'm confirmed, look into exactly what NATO's planning in that regard and come back to you on that.
Thank you. I look forward to that. Finally, the administration recently appointed retired General Wolf as the Ukraine Security Assistance Coordinator. which I think was a very positive move. Can you talk about how the relationship with General Wolf as the coordinator will work as you think about your role in coordinating security with the Ukrainians?
Senator, only briefly, because that's still working its way out right now. We encourage the efforts to coordinate. That is one of the difficult things in this overall collective effort. I saw Terry Wolf a couple of weeks ago in Ramstein, and we had a couple of words about it, but if I'm confirmed, I look forward to working with him to make sure that all of these systems work together closely.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing more. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
ma'am.
Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Shaheen. Senator Cotton, please.
General, congratulations on your nomination. Thank you for your career of distinguished service. Thanks to your wife, Christina, for supporting you and no doubt supporting the families of the troops you've led over the years. And thanks to your family for their service. The defense of this nation is often a family affair. I want to discuss the request by Finland and Sweden to join NATO. That's a political decision that will be made by the President and this Senate, as well as 29 other NATO members. But NATO is foremost a military alliance. So I would like to get your professional military judgment on the implications of adding Sweden and Finland to NATO. What do you think it'll do to bolster our common defense to have Sweden and Finland as members of NATO?
Senator, I look forward to the accession of Finland and Sweden to the alliance from a military perspective. Each of those militaries brings quite a bit of capability and capacity to the alliance from day one. For example, Finland has a large army, well-equipped, very well-trained, very quickly expansible, exercised very frequently, and absolutely expert in defending the borderline that it has had with Russia for these past decades, an expertise that they demonstrated in 1939 and has built on ever since. Finland, in addition to its big army, has F-15 fighter jets and has just decided to buy 64 F-35. So they will arrive bringing capacity and capability to the alliance. Sweden's the same thing, a smaller army, but a very capable army and an army that's growing. My colleague, Carl Engelbrechtsson, has a 200% increase in his acquisition budget over a 5-year period. They've recently bought Patriots and are contemplating buying some other equipment. We work with them very closely. Critically, they bring a navy in the Baltic Sea, which will be of enormous military significance to the alliance. And then if we look geographically, with the accession of those two countries, the entire Black Sea, with the exception of a couple of few kilometers, will be coastline of NATO nations, which will create a very different geometry in the area, sir.
I think you mean the entire Baltic Sea, right?
I'm sorry, I of course, meant Baltic Sea.
Can you speak specifically about what it means for the Russia's Baltic fleet to now have the northern shores of the Gulf of Finland a part of NATO, since the southern shore of Estonia already is, and then also what it means to have Gotland, the large Swedish island, in the middle of the Baltic fleet? What does that mean to Russia's Baltic fleet and their defense planning?
Well, sir, in the most generic sense, it provides a bunch of different dilemmas, almost geometric dilemmas that Russia does not have right now as they sail forth from St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad. So it will be advantageous.
You mentioned one other key feature of geography, which is the 800-mile border that Finland has with Russia. Some might say, gosh, this exposes NATO to a lot more risk because you have this large border. It sounds like your perspective is that rather than exposing NATO to risk, it exposes Russia to greater risk and complicates Russia's defense planning. Could you elaborate?
I do think that, Senator. I think that for a couple of reasons. First of all, Russia has not historically put too many ground forces on that border. It's been an economy of force theater for them because they thought they had a relationship with Finland that allowed them to do that. This allowed Russia to concentrate ground forces in other places. That possibility will now go away for Russia. In addition to that, the Finns, as I mentioned a moment ago, are absolutely expert in defending that border. I've personally gone on a snowmobile with the chief of the border guards and with the chief of the Finnish army down half the length of that border, and I was very impressed at their ability to defend it.
Do you think the Russian general staff is fairly well versed in the history of the Winter War, which you alluded to, 1939, 1940?
Sir, I know they are. That Winter War is studied not just by Western armies as a model of how to beat a larger force, but it's studied by the Russians as well as an important lesson to learn from their past.
And it sounds like you think that even 80 years on, that those Russian general staff might not want to put their hand on that hot stove again after they did it in the Winter War.
I would hate to put myself inside their head, Senator, but I wouldn't want to do it if I were them.
All right. One final question. There was a report a couple days ago in the Wall Street Journal that the administration is considering sending special operation forces to guard the embassy in Kyiv. Can you comment on that report?
Sir, I can't comment publicly on it, but we currently do not have any Marine security detachment with the embassy in Kyiv. And with regard to special forces, I think we'd have to talk about it in a separate.
I was going to, you answered my next question, which was going to be, do we have Marines at that embassy, which we have in pretty much every other embassy all around the world. In fact, I just checked this morning. We do, in fact, have Marines in Moscow, yet we don't have Marines guarding our embassy in Kyiv is their job all around the world. And I think that's because the president came out last year and publicly stated that he would never put troops into Ukraine. And now the administration is running around like a cat chasing its tail, trying to figure out how to let these Marines do their job at that embassy, just like they're doing in Moscow, just like they're doing at 5 diplomatic facilities in China. I think we should just let the Marines go do their job at the embassy. This is another instance in which I'm afraid the president is self-deterring in a public fashion, which is sending the wrong signal to Vladimir Putin. So you don't have to respond, but you can take it under advisement. I think the Marines should be standing guard at the Kyiv embassy whenever you get confirmed.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Cotton. Senator Gillibrand, please.
Thank you so much, and congratulations. We're very grateful for your service. In visiting some of our NATO allies, we talked about Article 5 and when that gets triggered after a cyber attack. Do you have views about what level of cyber attack on a NATO ally would trigger an Article 5 requirement?
Senator, this, of course, is a very active debate inside the alliance. It's an active debate, I think for most countries. And in fact, that debate has been joined, but it has not come to a conclusion inside NATO yet. I believe that there are various levels of cyber attack, as you point out, and at some point they become more akin to a kinetic attack than others. One complicating thing I think we've seen in the recent past is the activity of non-state cyber actors in the same time frame as states are contemplating cyber defense. So I believe that attribution is going to continue to be one of the most important parts of any cyber policy.
And with regard to Russia's cyber threat specifically to our forces in Europe and our allies in NATO, what steps are you taking and will take if confirmed to ensure that our IT networks, communication channels, and weapon systems and platforms are secure and able to perform as intended in the event of a broader conflict?
Yes, ma'am. In my current role as the commander of U.S. Army Europe and Africa, I'm responsible to provide the basic secure backbone for Eucom's communications. So I work with DISA and with the Army Cyber and Network Command to do so. We have a regional cyber center at Wiesbaden. It does maintain overview of one of our networks, and I work closely with our network command to maintain defense of the others. This is something I get briefed on literally every week, and I'm satisfied with the level we have right now. We have to work on it constantly, though, and we do work on it constantly. In a broader sense, Senator, if I'm confirmed into the next job, the alliance is working in this direction also. So there is a NATO Cyber Center of Excellence. We are initiating the conversations necessary to have collective policy and strategy on network defense, but I believe much more needs to be done. I look forward to looking into it and getting back to you on that.
Thank you. Last week, Finland's parliament overwhelmingly voted to join NATO following applications by both Finland and Sweden to join the alliance. Given the extensive border that Finland shares with Russia and Finland's advanced military capabilities, can you describe how we can effectively integrate these two countries into the NATO umbrella?
Sure, Senator. So first of all, we already practice that in the ground domain all the time. And I can speak, I think, for Cobra Harigian and Bob Burke at U.S. Air Forces Europe and Naval Forces Europe as well. They do this all the time in the air and maritime domains. We exercise with Finland. I've got soldiers there, I believe, right now. I just brought a couple of Stryker companies back out of there. We've got a parachute battalion going up there later this summer. We exercise frequently with Sweden, to include on high-end air and missile defense things. I think it will be quite easy for us to integrate them quickly. We've been integrating them in our large-scale exercises as well as our operations abroad for some years now.
Turkey obviously has expressed hesitation about admitting Finland and Sweden. How will you approach engaging your defense officials in Turkey to discuss how the addition of Finland and Sweden will strengthen the NATO alliance?
Ma'am, clearly the core of the matter is going to be a diplomatic and a policy decision on all nations' parts. So I'd like to stay away from that for a moment. But at a military level, we retain robust military-to-military relations with our Turkish allies, and we have done so for the past years that I've been associated with working in Europe. We conduct exercises with them, consultations with them, and the like.
But not with regard to this objection that Turkey's just articulated.
Ma'am, specifically with regard to that has not been a subject inside the military-to-military dialogue, at least my military-to-military dialogue with the chief of their army.
Thank you. My time has expired. I'm going to submit an additional question to the record about alignment and work with Spacecom.
I look forward to it, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Gillibrand. Senator Rounds, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, General Cavoli. First of all, thank you for your continued service to our nation, and thank you to your family for their support. I'd also like to thank you for taking the time to meet with me earlier this week. You are incredibly qualified for this assignment, and I do intend to support your nomination. General, the FY23 budget request increases funding for the European Deterrence Initiative by about $400 million. This initiative has been pivotal in our ability to respond as quickly as we did in Ukraine. From your experience, can you speak to the importance of this initiative, and if confirmed, what changes would you make?
Thank you, Senator. So the European Deterrence Initiative has not just been important, it's kind of been like oxygen to us for several years now. It's the thing that allows us to do all of the exercising, to build all of the infrastructure, to pre-position all of the equipment that we've been using and that you've seen us use in response to this crisis. So since my first tour as a general officer in Europe, when the original ERI was authorized and appropriated, we've been benefiting from it. We've slowly but surely used it to put infrastructure into place where we are pre-positioning equipment, and now we exercise that equipment at a large scale with the funding that this committee authorizes. It's absolutely vital to what we've been doing, and I think we see the benefits of it in our rapid ability to react in the past couple of months, Senator.
Thank you, sir. General, in your answers to the advanced policy questions, you mentioned that the joint force must be prepared to counter threats posed by rapid technological advancements, such as advanced chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear, or CBRN threats, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, robotics, directed energy, and hypersonics. Quite a list. Based on your experience in the Eucom AOR, what developments are you seeing regarding those threats, particularly those pertaining to quantum computing and artificial intelligence?
Thank you for the question. the ability rapidly to process the vast amounts of information that are available now really drives our ability to discern intentions as well as to find ways to strike it. So there are a few efforts that the U.S. side has been working on with regard to artificial intelligence. We are using a couple of those in Europe right now during this crisis. They're proving very, very useful. They help us keep track of where everybody is and what they're doing. And if I could take it into a classified setting with you sometime, Senator, I'd be delighted to go into more detail, but it's paying big dividends for us already. However, we're aware that our adversaries are working on the same things, so it's all the more imperative for us to continue to develop this beneficial technology.
Basically, what you're saying is they are a pacing threat with regard to those new capabilities.
So I think the NDS has it right in that regard, especially China is a pacing threat with regard to those capabilities.
What lessons in CBRN response have been learned from the DSURF that should be applied to the overall joint force?
Sir, the CBRN posture that we have across the joint force is being relooked right now at the departmental level as well as at the service levels in conjunction with the combatant commands. I've had my chance to review the Army parts of it. We are updating it, first of all, with regard to what we understand the emergence of the threat to be, but secondly, with regard to our own posture and our own technologies to deal with the threat. As you know, for many years in Afghanistan and Iraq, that was not a primary concern. As we move back into contemplating large-scale operations, we find it necessary to revisit that.
General, the SACR has worldwide responsibilities with respect to the planning and operation of NATO operations, NATO military operations. If confirmed, how would you view your role as the SACR with regard or with respect to China?
Sir, China is present in Europe, and China is going to present increasing security challenges inside Europe. My job primarily will be to make sure that our policymakers have military options insofar as they need them or choose to employ them.
Thank you, sir. My time has expired.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Round. Senator Warren, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and General Cavoli. It's good to see you again. Congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you, ma'am.
Your deep expertise in European affairs makes you particularly qualified to serve in this role at this critical time. Now, it's clear that Vladimir Putin never anticipated that his illegal invasion of Ukraine would unite so many countries around the world. This committee primarily focuses on our military power, but this crisis has made clear how important it is to invest in all of our tools of influence to advance U.S. interests. Prioritizing diplomacy and coordination with our allies has obviously paid huge dividends. Diplomatic success, however, does not happen overnight. This is the result of long, time-consuming investments. So let me start by asking, General Cavoli, do you think it's important for the United States to provide robust funding for the State Department and USAID?
I do, Senator.
Would you like to just say an extra word about that?
Absolutely. You know, so the United States, like many nations, attempts to lead with diplomacy. As you noted, for diplomacy to be effective, it can't happen at the moment it's needed. It has to be developed over years of relationship building, and that requires resources and funding. I benefit as an officer when our diplomacy is robust. I benefit as an officer, and I think we benefit as a nation when our diplomats are armed the way they need to be to conduct the business of the nation.
Good. I appreciate that. Climate change is another major security challenge that we need to work harder on. The most recent annual threat assessment found, and I want to quote it, climate change will increasingly exacerbate risks to U.S. national security interests, unquote. The world's dependence on fossil fuels and authoritarian petroleum and petrostates significantly undermines our interests in safety. In your response to the committee's advanced policy questions, you said that climate change, quote, will be a critical consideration in all we do. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that, General?
Sure, Senator. First, of course, our national defense strategy lays that out. So you know, it is something that we have to consider in everything we do. But you know, right now I'm responsible for Army activities in Africa. Africa suffers from desertification. That desertification leads to intense competition for resources. Name your location, you can find it. The grain shortage that we were discussing earlier is exacerbated by an ongoing drought in India. All of this is having an impact inside my AOR in Africa, which will spill out possibly into other areas. So yes, it's something I take thoughtfully and seriously. If we look at my European AOR in my current job, of course, the opening of seaways in the Arctic, which has been increasing and accelerating in recent years, is changing the military geography of the high north, which is something that NATO and U.S. Eucom are both dealing with as well right now.
Well, I appreciate your thoughtful response here. This is a crisis that often gets overlooked when we're talking about national security. And as you rightly point out, it is deeply threatening to all of us. There's one last area that I'd like to talk about. Over the past few months, Congress has provided tens of billions of dollars in emergency spending to support the department's response to Russia's invasion. I support that spending, but I'm very concerned about the risks of waste without proper oversight. DOD owes this committee a backlog of several years of reports on the future year's defense plan for the European Deterrence Initiative. I've spoken to both your predecessor and DOD about the importance of providing these reports. A letter I received from the controller last week claims that yet another component of DOD will provide the report. Now, I'm getting sick of the runaround here. DOD has not complied with the law. Not having these reports hurts oversight and planning for your command. So, General Cavoli, I understand that this is not your primary responsibility, but you will be the senior military leader overseeing this spending. So will you make sure that this committee receives the reports that are required by law and that we will receive them this year?
I will continue to submit all the data that I'm required to, ma'am. We have done that in the past, and I commit to doing that in the future.
I appreciate that, and I will hold you to that. You know, it's very likely that you and the President will come to us again with additional supplemental requests. If you want Congress to continue to approve tens of billions of dollars, you need to show us how you are making sure that that money is spent responsibly.
Senator, if I could just make a comment. It is not lost on me how much money we're talking about here. And I and we owe it to the American taxpayer to have a thoughtful application of those funds and a full accounting of them.
I appreciate it. Look forward to the reporting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Senator Tillis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, thank you for the time that you spent with Senator Shaheen and I a week or so ago, and congratulations on your nomination. I look forward to supporting it, and thanks to your family. I want to get a little bit back. You covered the landscape on Finland, I think, very well, and you also discussed Sweden, but you mentioned the increased investment that Sweden intends to make in their military, and we know that we want them to get up to the 2% threshold. Can you give me some insight into the specific actions they're taking that would give you confidence that they would be there by 2028?
Yeah, well, they've expressed the intention to do so. In my conversations with my colleague Carl Engelbrektsson, Major General Engelbrektsson, the chief of the Swedish Army, he's confident. He believes that they are going to get there on schedule. They've accelerated to 2024.
If you know, what would that look like? I've met with Swedish officials almost every week for the past month, and one of the comments that they made is they fully intend to do it, but they also have to be able to absorb the investment. So with respect to the added investment, what is that likely to look like in terms of ground, naval, air forces?
Right. Carl adopted a motto of 3-2-1, the key part of which is to go up to 3 brigades, which is adding an additional brigade. That's a big chunk of it right there, I believe. The second part of it is to add high-end capabilities. So the purchase of Patriot, which my command is helping them to integrate into their units right now. They bought their first battalion. It's been delivered in the past year here, and those are purchases very quickly that help us lift defense spending. So I think the combination of expanding the size of the Army and raising the technology of a couple of the things like the air and missile defense will, in the ground domain, help. Sir, I can't speak quite as in detail about how they will use the additional or how they will absorb the additional funding in the air and maritime domains or other domains.
Okay, to the extent you can, though, can you talk a little bit about the advantage that Sweden brings in terms of naval presence in the Black Sea?
Sir, so Sweden has ports on the Baltic Sea and has naval forces that routinely sail in the Baltic Sea. As you know, the Gotland is sometimes referred to as the unsinkable aircraft carrier. So I think they will bring an enormous amount of surface capability to us in the Baltic Sea. They also have underwater capabilities that we have that will help us as well.
The excuse me, the funding that we approved and that I voted for, the supplemental funding for Ukraine, you think it was a wise decision for us to send that resource to Ukraine?
Senator, I think we will put that to good use. We will put that to good use.
Can you also speak a bit about how the food assistance and the broader scope of the bill focusing on the threat to food sources in North Africa, and what would happen if we don't pay attention to that in terms of stability in areas that ISIS, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram would love to see destabilized?
Sure, absolutely, Senator. So the groups that you just named feed on weak governance and food insecurity and corruption and poverty, just like groups like that do elsewhere in the world. Those groups have been doing fairly well in the past couple of years. They've made gains in the southwestern Sahel that we really need to keep an eye on and that our European allies need to help with. A food shortage now would just exacerbate the situation down there, Senator.
Thank you. Last thing, Senator Shaheen and I visited Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Kosovo. I got the sense in speaking with the leaders of those countries that they felt like they've been kind of on the back burner in terms of our focus. What more do you think we need to do in NATO, if any, to really increase our presence and demonstrate that we're very concerned with that part of the world?
So I think the first thing we can do is exercise on an increasing basis down there. As you know, the U.S. Army Europe Defender exercise series focused on the Baltics last year. It had a salutary effect immediately. I could see that. We were warmly welcomed every place we were. And so I think as a beginning, as a first step, we need to continue that.
Thank you. Look forward to supporting your nomination.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator King, please.